Hey guys, Jen with Loki Locks here. I just wanted to make this video basically in the hopes it reaches someone, even one person, who is going through or has gone through any kind of trauma or abuse. Um, and this is basically my experience with that. And I'm just hoping it reaches someone who's going through it currently to get out of that situation, or who's already gone through it to help with that healing process, that you're not alone and that you are strong enough. So my experience is I was in a marriage for over 4 years, which I recently, separated from about 9 months ago. And it was 4 years of pure hell, is the easiest way to describe it. So with my experience, a lot of people have asked me, well, didn't you see red flags? Didn't you see any warning signs? Yes, they were subtle at first. That's the thing. They're not going to be obvious usually. And that's how they plan it. They're very manipulative in that sense. So I'm a very introverted person. This person happened to be very charismatic, very outgoing, and I was an easy target because I'm very loving. I easily let others come to me and make a connection if they want, because I'm not outgoing enough to, reach out to others. So I was an easy target for him. And a couple months into our relationship, I lost my mother to alcoholism. Unfortunately, she succumbed to cirrhosis due to that. But 2 weeks later, found out I was pregnant by this man. And as I was grieving, I thought maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Maybe I lost my mom, but I have a new soul to bring into this world, to not replace her, but feel like I have family, because I don't have that much family in this world left. My parents had me later in life, so a lot of my family kind of is passed on by now. And so my dad, about 6 months later, also passed away while I was pregnant. That was in February. That December, before my dad was just getting out of the hospital, he was in and out after mom passed. And I remember that Christmas Eve, I had been married for about 2 weeks, and I was, like I said, about 5 months pregnant. And this individual I was with, my ex, he had also an issue with alcohol. And I don't drink just because of my past with my parents and seeing how it deteriorated them. I just didn't want that road for myself. Do not look down on you for it if you do. I didn't look down on my parents. I miss them and love them dearly every day. So I pray you get the help you need. If you are suffering, please reach out, but that is your journey. But yeah, my ex, he became very violent when he drank. And so basically that Christmas Eve, I triggered something in his jealousy somehow. I don't remember the conversation specifically, but basically he blew up and stormed out after I cried my eyes out, begging him not to do this on Christmas Eve. And I was almost thankful he left, and he didn't tell me where he went, but at that time, I just said, okay. I just took a deep breath, and I remember crying, thinking, okay, this is bad. This is bad. I needed to get out. And my dad had the time, even though he was not doing well, he only lived a half mile from me. I thought, okay, maybe I can walk down. I didn't have anyone else in this town. Everyone else I knew was my ex's friends. Like I said, I'm not very outgoing. I don't go to social events or outings very often. So I didn't have a support group. I didn't have friends there. And so I felt like my dad was the only person I could turn to in this situation. And I remember walking down, and I lived right across the street from the desert. I lived in the Southwest at this time. And I remember just thinking and sitting in the dirt and believing that I can't go to my dad. I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna end this man's life who's already not really long for this world, because he's gonna see his 22-year-old daughter just married, thinking she's just married in this horrible relationship that is turning out bad, very bad. And she's a new mom about to be. My wife just passed away. I wasn't gonna put that added stress on him, and I just knew I had no choice to go over there. So I turned back and went home to my apartment, and I just said, okay, I'll go to sleep. And that became my new normal. Anytime my ex had decided to lash out, anytime I had to deal with that violence, I wouldn't talk back. I wouldn't yell back, because I could observe enough to know that any word that you spit out at these people, they're going to turn around and use it against you as a weapon and turn it into, well, this is why, because you're the issue. So I felt there was no word that I could say. So I just decided to go to sleep. I slept on the couch. I didn't want to sleep in that bed that night. And he came back, I think it was about 1:30 in the morning, and woke me out of my sleep, told me, get in the bed. I said, no, I want to sleep on the couch. And 5 months pregnant, just yanked me off the couch by my arm and dragged me over to the hallway, where I finally I stood up, said, okay, I'll go. And that was the night that I thought, okay, this is life now. All right. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't feel like I could bother anyone else. I have a real problem as well, where I always have felt like I'm in people's way. Like, I would rather go through whatever I'm going through and not bother people or ask for help, because I don't want to bring that negativity into their life. They don't deserve that. So I just bit my lip and dealt with it. And then my son was born in May. And for 4 years, guys, I dealt with everything from verbal abuse, public belittling, public abuse, being shouted at, yelled at, degraded, insulted, being told I was a moron. Every thought, opinion, action, I was wrong. And I continually walked on eggshells, pins and needles, every day. Even the smallest thing, like making coffee for someone in the morning, I only did it because I was, quote, doing it because I did something wrong. So that was conditioned into my brain. And I'm someone who normally is very much about women empowerment. I'm very much about, being a strong person and a warrior heart. But somewhere along the line, I just shifted where I was okay, or I felt I had to be okay with being treated that way. And you don't. You do not have to be. It took me a while to see that I was actually being brainwashed. It took me about 3 years in, about 2.5, 3 years, when I started saying this isn't normal. I have a coping mechanism also. You may be the same, where I laugh things off. I laugh dark things off. And it is a form of repression. It's a form of escapism to try to, I suppose, make lighter of the situation at hand so that you can process and move forward without completely breaking down. That's my coping mechanism. So I would usually just laugh it off, and also to make others around me feel more comfortable, I'd say, oh, haha, it's just, I'm in on the joke. I'm in on it because, that way people aren't afraid for me or in uncomfortable situations. And that was the wrong choice, definitely. I shouldn't have let it go on for so long as I did, because by year 3 or 4, I felt like there was a hole, like literally a hole inside of me here. and it was like just an abyss that I was drowning in, to the point where I was calling out to my dead parents, asking them, what do I do? How do I get out? Where do I go? I don't have anywhere to go. Do I stay for my son? You know, I was threatened with, you know, my son being taken from me. You know, these are things that I feared. I legitimately would fear these things. So it made it so much harder, and that made that sinking feeling even worse, because I felt like a caged animal who was trapped, who couldn't get out, who couldn't run, and felt like I had no avenue or support system out there that could help me or care. So that was very debilitating, to say the least, where I felt like every day I would live this life walking on eggshells, and to the point where at night I would think to myself, well, if I can't have like a good reality in this world, maybe I can astral project, and maybe I can live a nice life in dreamland. Maybe I can have a nice life in my sleep, and then when I wake up, I'll just like, I can bear this nightmare. You know, I can bear living this way, which is bonkers. Yeah, I know that. But essentially that's how I felt. And it took until I was laying in bed one night, and that was his preferred way of ambushing me. It was at night when I was sleeping, because I was off guard and he had time to stew about whatever he was thinking that set him off. And I would be sleeping and he would get me then. And one night I remember, woke me up by grabbing my throat and suffocating me until even when I finally got his hand off, my throat had closed so tight that it was almost like his hand never left. It was still gripped in my throat, if that makes sense. So it took a minute, and I literally thought to myself, oh, this is the night I die. And my son was laying right next to me. So after that moment, I thought, okay, I got to get out of here. I'm not gonna live past, you know, a year or two more of this. So, you know, a few more months went by, and, you know, within that time, you know, I've had a gun put up to my head in the middle of the night, being told if I don't live a certain way by his rules, I was basically agreeing to live by a certain set of rules or else, you know. And I decided, after the cops had been called by an anonymous caller who had heard him doing these things to me, I decided to get out. I needed to get out, but I had to be careful about it. But I ended up moving all the way from the Southwest, where I was living, all the way to the East Coast. About 9 months ago that happened, where I took my son and left. And it was so hard at first, guys. Honestly, if you're on this journey and you're just starting it where I was, it's really hard at first. There were times where I thought about going back. I thought about, you know, God, did I make the wrong mistake? Did I leave when I should have stayed? Because even though it was bad, at least, you know, I wasn't bothering anybody, and it was just me that was suffering at that point. But then I thought about my son. I thought, okay, he's in a better place. He's in a more healthy environment. He's not with that hostility, which my son never was harmed. It was never directed towards my son. It was just me. So, you know, don't think it was ever directed towards him. But, you know, it was a eye-opening experience, because I essentially came out here homeless. And I had, you know, a few people who I was allowed to sleep under their roof, thank God. You know, but it was still rough, guys. It was still rough. I slept on a tiny little cot with my son for 2 months to get my footing. And then eventually to my adopted mom's house where I had my own place where it was safe and away from everything. And now I'm here. I'm here in a stable home with people that I love, and life is a lot better. And me recovering now that I'm in a stable place, it was very hard. It was very difficult because once you're in so much trauma, and also growing up with alcoholic parents, even though they were the most amazing, adoring parents I've ever known in my life, they had their issues where I lived in a lot of dysfunction, where I became used to the toxicity, and I became used to the chaos, and that's not normal. And I had to, become 28 years old to figure that out, and I'm still figuring it out. And so for any of you who are going through it, you'll see the signs once you get out that it'll come months later. I still have issues sleeping. I'm still an insomniac, and that probably goes way back to my childhood, but that's still something I'm sorting out. But from the nightmares, they've decreased. They still happen sometimes, but they have decreased. And you'll notice things about your behavior that you didn't notice before. So you'll notice, oh my God, for example, I'm extremely defensive of everything. I didn't notice that before until I was in like a stable environment. So after years of being told every opinion you have, every thought, every idea, every action is wrong, you naturally gain this defensive protocol where you're in defense mode before they even say anything about you. And so the people I'm with now, it's, well, why are you so defensive about that? I'm like, I don't know. So that's something I'm really working hard on changing, is not being so defensive about the smallest things. And I really appreciate the patience of the people around me who can deal with that and, be patient with me when I'm moving through these phases. There's other things that I'm trying to deal with as well. Coping, for example, coping with, laughing off things. I'm trying to not deflect by laughing them off or dismissing them. I'm trying to actually work through them. Like, okay, I need to sit down and actually process this rather than just saving it for later in my emotional bank and then having it burst like a balloon. Yeah, that's not great either. So it's definitely a journey, guys. So if you're going through this, just know that you are strong enough. And this is men and women. I've had a buddy who's gone through it with his ex-girlfriend and his, daughter's mom, and it happens to men too. A lot of people don't think about that, but it does. And, if it happens to you, man or woman, like, just find someone or somewhere to reach out to. I didn't have anyone, so I reached out to an online hotline where I could type, because my ex was always hovering over me, and so I didn't have a safe place to call. I just texted, and that's enough too, where they were like, yeah, I'm telling them my situation. They're like, yeah, that's abuse. That was like, oh wow, and guys, just reach out to someone. Women's shelters, they are a great resource. When I moved out here, they had wonderful resources, even a counselor and therapist that helped me identify some issues that I really needed to work on. I personally, if you are seeking counseling or a therapist, I highly suggest going and searching for one that's specialized in trauma or abuse even. I feel like those are the best options as far as therapy goes. But if you even need just a diary, guys, I write down sometimes the thoughts, because I feel like writing them out helps with the chaos in your mind, because it can be hard to, once you repress those memories, it's hard to think them out unless you write it down. At least that's how my brain works. But I really appreciate you guys letting me vent that out, letting me tell my story. There's so much more that I've not even said, but I wanted to get that out there as just an idea of what I've gone through, because I've made it, guys. I've made it to where I'm doing my dream and working on my dream to where I can make, you know, things like hair that makes you feel beautiful and spreads that message of empowerment and self-beauty and self-love is the most important thing in this whole moral of the story is love yourself and know you're strong enough and you are a flippin' warrior, guys. You are a warrior, you are a queen, a goddess, or God if you're a man. So if you guys have any questions, if you guys are curious how I may have been processing things, if you're going through similar situations, reach out to me, guys. Please let me know. I am an advocate for speaking out and speaking up, because the more people I talk to, the more prevalent it seems this is happening. And I feel like so many people feel unheard, and you don't have to. It's a stigma that people don't want to talk about, but you're not weak because you let it happen. I was afraid to talk about it because I felt weak. I was like, well, I allowed this to happen. It's not your fault. It's not your fault, first and foremost. So just know that. But I appreciate you guys, and thank you to everyone who supports my channel, supports my Etsy shop, Loki Locks. Thank you, and you guys rock. Thanks.